is blamed. There's this incredible diabolical feature of the Jew that they're able to at times pretend that they're victims, but really they're diabolical and genocide.
Gad Saad was on Joe Rogan talking about Islam. All of you know that I don't love to dive deep so far into religion when it comes to this conflict, but believe it or not, this conflict is deeply religious and deeply political. Let's hear what Gad Saad had to say and talk about it after.
It is an existential affront that the Jewish state exists in the Middle East. So look at all other religious minorities across Arabia. Egypt used to be completely Coptic Christian, 100%, many hundred years ago. Today, there are 10% Copts left. What happened to those Copts? There used to be tons of Christians in Syria. What happened to those Syrians? There used to be tons of Christians in Lebanon. There still are some, about 35%, but Lebanon used to be a majority Christian country. So the goal of Islam, not individual Muslims, right? Again, I don't need to preface by saying there are millions and millions of lovely, kind, peaceful Muslims. Of course there is. But Islam as an ideology, does it tolerate others? Well, we have 1400 years of history that either says it does or it doesn't, right? We don't have to watch TikTok videos. And nothing could be clearer than what the words of Muhammad were, the prophet of Islam, who said that you need to rid Arabia of Christians, but certainly the Jews. So the existence of the land of Israel is an affront to that. One more point, I'll see it to fall back to you. In Islam, there's a concept called Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb. That means the house of Islam and the house of war. Anything that's under the Islamic control is good. Anything that's yet to be under Islamic control is under the house of war. Once a territory is under Islamic control and you lose it, you have to get it back. It is your dominion forever. This is why, for example, Andalusia, which was at one point controlled, which is in current Spain, which was controlled by the Moors, an Islamic conquistador, a lot of jihadists will say, inshallah, we have to reconquer Andalusia. It is our land, because once it's under... So Israel existentially cannot exist. So why am I saying all this? You can't have peace if you have the other side that truly never wants for you to exist. That's the bottom line. If you can change people's heart where they say, look, I get a piece of land, you get another piece, let's build an incredible, vibrant co-society together, you'd have peace. But if you're taught from straight out of the womb that the Jews is the reason for every calamity in the world, you're not going to have peace.
But don't you think that there are Jews and there are Israelis that treat Palestinians as if they're less?
There is that in Texas in terms of treating people who are Hispanic. The darkness of the human heart is not monopolized by one group. There are super nasty Jews and they are incredibly lovely and kind Jews. There are super nice Muslims and incredibly brutal Muslims. So there is no monopoly on the darkness of the human heart. So I concede that. Of course, there are Jews that are not very keen on having Palestinian neighbors. But as someone who grew up in the two worlds, right, I'm an Arabic-speaking Jew. I hang around with tons of Muslims. I hang around with tons of Jews. Have I ever heard somebody in my Jewish family say, oh God, I can't wait for us to eradicate the 1.52 billion Muslims in the world? I've never heard that. Have I heard incessantly all the time about, inshallah, we'll get rid of the Jews? Every second. You just have to say, hi, Ahmad. The next line is, God damn it, we got to get rid of the Jews. Now, it's become a lot.
Is it really that common where you are?
It's as common as the heat in Texas. It is definitional. As a matter of fact, I introduced a game, I mean facetiously, but I mean it seriously, 6 Degrees of Jew. So that's a play on 6 degrees of...
Kevin Bacon.
Exactly. So I give you a calamity in the world, and you've got up to 6 causal steps to blame the Jew. So an Amazonian frog just died in the Amazon. Go. And so I will post these on Twitter, and people give answers.
Right.
Now, oftentimes they're just playing along, but that's the mindset. You got diabetes? Well, that's because the Jews who are controlling the pharmaceutical industry are not releasing the drug. I'll give you a recent one that I faced.
Okay.
So I put up a police lineup of some guys that had been caught in Huddersfield, which is a town in England, who had been grooming and raping young British white girls. And you may or may not know this. I'm not sure if we've discussed it in the past. In Britain, over the past 25 years, there's been an unbelievable industrial scale level grooming and raping of young white girls by Asian men. That's a euphemism for men of a certain religious heritage, but you say they're Asian. So their names are, let me summarize them for you. Muhammad, Ahmad, Muhammad, Ahmad, Muhammad, 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 Ahmad, Ahmad, Muhammad, Ahmad, Ahmad, Muhammad, Ahmad, Muhammad. Okay? So I put those up And I sarcastically said, I don't have a big enough brain to do the big data analytics to understand what is the commonality across all those gentlemen. Could anybody help me? Do you know how many people wrote to me and blamed it on the Jews? Not facetiously. So now I'm going to ask you, Joe.
How?
I was just going to ask you that. How is it when 3 Muhammads rape your 12-year-old British girl, you blame it on Mordechai? 3 Muhammads lead to Mordechai. Tell me how. You tell me.
I don't know. How do they do it?
Who let them in? It's the Jewish cabal who controls immigration policy. It's George Soros, the Jew, who controls the open society ideology.
I don't think you can really just connect George Soros to Jewish. If you look at his policies, he seems anti-Western civilization.
I agree, but for the Jew hater, any causal explanation.
So one individual who just happens to be Jewish,
or they point to some other one. There's one I don't even know who she is. I think Barbara Lerner or something. Somebody will correct us in the comment section where they show her saying something. Oh, we need to flood, and she happens to be Jewish. But for every Jewish person who is pro open door policy, there's a counter Jewish person. Here's one who is not for open border policies. Right? Stephen Miller, who worked in the Trump administration, is Jewish. He's probably the biggest anti-open door immigration. So, but that's the mindset of the Jew hater. Everything is blamed. There's this incredible diabolical feature of the Jew that they're able to at times pretend that they're victims, but really they're diabolical and genocidal. It's grotesque, man.
It's weird. It's just weird that it became so out in the open.
I don't know if it's so weird that it became so out in the open when Hitler and Nazi Germany made it so popular to feel this exact way about Jewish people. And in the Quran, it does talk about how the religion of Islam must take over Arabia. And when you believe in God, and when you praise to God, and when you pray every single day, that everything that you do is just another deed towards this God that you believe in. And in the God's book, when it talks about, just like he said, from birth, when you're told that Israel, the establishment of Israel, Jews, of course, and Christians do not belong, it needs to be ours, there's a really difficult way to not have that indoctrinate people who believe in the book. To sit here and say that I believe word for word of the Talmud would be incorrect. Same with the Torah would be incorrect. Because I'm a human. There are many moderate and amazing Muslims in the world. I know who they are personally. They don't believe in every word of the Quran. They don't believe in every word of the Hadiths. There are some who do. There are some who deeply, ideologically believe in it. They breathe it. They actually know no other way. And this is a form of extremism. And I think that an extremism on a Jewish perspective, an extremism on a Muslim perspective, extremism, I think anywhere, political, Republican, Democrat, left, right, is never healthy and never ever good. And we have a world where they have looked at the IDF and the Knesset and the government being the extremists, and Jews and Israelis being the extremists, the Zionist movement. And you have Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthi rebels and the IRGC, these militia groups being extremists on the other side. Unfortunately, there is a complete miscommunication and misinterpretation that people are equating the IDF to be categorized as a terrorist entity when it is a military by which its citizens are required to serve for the safety and sake of that country, and Hamas, which was just a terrorist organization that propped themselves up through intimidation, violence, and fear, and radical ideologies. They are not the same. They are not the same thing. They're not even close to the same thing. And the reason that you can find this out, and the way that you can find this out, is just by looking at A, what they attempt to do, B, and I'm talking to you, by the way, as a whole. Are there extremist IDF soldiers? Of course. But that doesn't mean that they represent the entire IDF, just like God was saying in the beginning of this conversation. David Duke, founder of the KKK, does not represent all Americans. Does that mean that because David Duke is an American, that all Americans are anti-Semitic and all Americans are going to racially discriminate against black people? Of course not. There are racist people and there are people who support the KKK and people like David Duke. Shame on them. Just like I would say shame on that extremist IDF soldier who would say, hey, family, I can't wait until all of the Palestinians, until all of the Muslims are gone. Because I agree with God. I've never heard somebody say that in my circles. And I don't think you see Jewish people and Israeli people trying to take over societies and land across the world. There's one Jewish state. But ask yourself, how many Muslim states are there? Have a good day.